Hey there, traders. This is Christian Fromertz, Tribeca Trade Group, with your end of day recap for Monday. So, a couple revealing things this weekend. We talked about this in the weekend video, but in case you missed that, there was a lot of money that was being taken off the plate in VIX ETFs. A lot of profit taking. I have the chart of UVXY, which is levered, basically short-term levered VIX, very risky instrument. But I don't trade these, but what I do is kind of look for signals. I look for things that are going on here. The VIX going up, VIX going down. But all this heightened volume that happened last week, look at the money that was taken out. I believe it was $165 million. I'm going from memory that was taken out. I know it was 31% of the fund that was withdrawn on Friday. So this kind of give you a little bit of heads up. So people took advantage of the volatility and they got out. So that was the one story there. As I mentioned, three things to watch in my video this weekend. You couldn't have asked for kind of better price reaction out of those three things that I thought were most concerning. So number one was the DAX. The DAX was at the 200-day moving average. This is the German index, the biggest stocks in Germany, and pretty big global index, up 1.2% day. So nice recovery on the 200-day moving average. Nice bounce there. I also talked about IWM small caps, which kind of led the move down the last 2 weeks. Well, look at the bounce that they got today. They led up 1.5%, so really strong. When you look at, S&P was up 1%, the Qs were up 1.3%, and small caps did the best. So they were the ones that really looked like there was an issue, or looked like there could be an issue if they broke the 200-day moving average. They did not. They held and they bounced really nicely. IYT Transports, same thing. Was also looking at this and saying, geez, we're at the 200-day moving average. If we break here, that's not going to be so good. A lot of technicians, they look at they look for confirmation between one another, between the industrials and the transports. So nice bounce of the 200-day moving average here. Almost looks like we're forming a W pattern. So transports were up 1.8%. So they led, they outperformed. And so this is a possible W pattern here that's forming. So just keep in mind this is only one day. So while today was really nice, the price action was great. The option activity, I don't think we got huge volume, but we saw some nice trades that went up in the beginning of the day. Kind of let you know, kind of set the tone and the pace for today. Specifically, we saw a little bit of call buying going up in a couple different semi names. So SMH, which is the semiconductor ETF. Also, really good to see that. That's also, I view this as a leading indicator when what semis do. So SMH, the semi ETF, up 1.7. I'm sorry, that's wrong. Up almost 2%, 1.97% today. So again, these are all really good. There's not really much that you could say negative or bearish about today at all. Unless you're really trying to reach for something. This still has work to do. It needs to get a backup. It did make a lower, one of the few sectors that I would say made a lower high the last time around, and last Tuesday failed here with everything else in the market. So let's see what this can do. If this gets out of this trend line, also I think pretty positive. Also watching for a possible MACD crossover materializing here. So a couple of things to watch in the semi group. What did we see? We saw Broadcom calls right off the bat. So really nice. This looks like a little bit different picture, and it's got a lot of room before it gets to resistance. This is a name that reports earnings, I believe, next week. But really strong, really aggressive buyer this morning in AVGO. Which is here someplace, September 250s. And then we also saw AMD call buying. AMD a couple times today. So also, you go talk about the 200-day moving average, a nice bounce on the 200-day moving average. The star performer in this group was NVIDIA. Geez, what a move. Usually you have to wait 3 days for a move back like this, but man, what a move in this name, up $12, which is 8%, just up and to the right all day for NVIDIA. So really strong. And then the banks kind of led higher. They were the worst performing group last week. Regional banks got really smoked last week, especially kind of added to the fire or added to the damage on Friday or towards the end of last week when the CPI report came out. and that really puts a dampened the hopes of a rate hike, which the banks want rate hikes. So they overcome that today. They were up 2.3%. So again, it's something else that was a bit strong today. And going back to the VIX, the VIX was down. I mean, 20%. We're back down to 1233. So after hitting a high of 1728, pretty big move. So one day doesn't make a trend, one day doesn't make a market, but I think all in all, a lot of positives today. We'll see if we can kind of continue it for next week. Besides the couple of semi names that I mentioned that saw some option activity, a couple of really interesting call spreads. I know there was a small deal announced for this in this VMC stock. They bought, I believe, somebody this morning. This is a name we've seen call activity before, and it really hasn't worked at all. So maybe somebody's saying, "Hey, finally, this is an area where maybe there's a little bit of support." From here. But so what did they do? They bought the November 125, 135, 130 call spread. Comcast, which we've been seeing repeat activity now, I would say, because we saw some on Friday. On Friday, we saw the 41 calls versus 39 puts that were sold. Snap, which I think is a little bit of a short squeeze. We saw some calls right off the bat this morning. We also saw some Finisar calls as well. Hain was another interesting signal today. I think that the chart in Hain looks interesting. I don't know when this name reports. For some reason, you can't get an accurate date on some trading systems. But if you look at the daily chart, big move above the 200-day moving average, and it's kind of just been sitting here. A really nice green bar right on the 20-period moving average, kind of telling you it's holding the trend. I think this is a nice long setup versus support or your stop of maybe 43.01, which is the top of value of that red line there. So I like that trade as well in Hain. We saw Bud a couple times today, a little bit of two-way flow. There was some calls that were sold as well, so I'm not going to go into that one in great detail. This was a name that I covered last week in the video, talking about a long setup. This is probably, I would say, one of the top three trades of the day. This is XPO. So mention how well the transports did today. I like it when they do something like this. On a dip, they come in. Notice the price action taking out Thursday's whole big red bar. So between Friday and today. So we're now back. We're still below the 50-day moving average. We're still below the value area. But take a look at what somebody did today. They bought the September 60-65 call spread 10,000 times, and then they also added a little bit more to the lower strike, to the 60 calls. So I think a pretty interesting trade. Last trade on the call side, I would say, which this is a trade that I'm already in, ASML. Really got going when there was a little bit of calls that went up and towards the end of the day. So was kind of just grinding for the most part for the majority of the day, and then a big move up here. So that's a name that I got long. I think it was last week when we first saw that action. But so you can see not a huge amount of quantity of names, but I think there's definitely a couple interesting ones in here. So that's it for today's video. Again, I think great things that kind of the things that needed to bounce really well, they did it. Again, I'll repeat myself. While that's great, it's only one day, and one day doesn't make a trend. But I think you got more than what you could have asked for today, with the VIX getting pummeled and the German DAX up, small caps up, and transports all bouncing where they needed to. So that's it for today. Have a great have a great evening, and we'll be back early tomorrow morning, Tuesday, to kind of go over all those earnings. A lot of retail names reporting as well. That was the other thing with option activity. A lot of noise with a lot of retail names, which we saw that last week as well. So we'll see how that shapes up for tomorrow. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.